impossible, and they climbed the dawn wall. To give us some perspective, I want to show you a quick video. Please welcome Kevin Jorgeson. Well, that was cool.
It gives me chills to watch that, honestly.
Yeah, I'll bet. You don't see it on that big of a screen too often, I'm sure. Well, thank you for being here. We've got a group of folks very interested in how to face challenge and how to make the impossible possible. And so, tell us a little bit, for those in the audience that may not understand what a free climb is. I figured it was just you didn't have to pay for it.
Well, there's that. But it's basically everything you just saw, and it's how most climbers participate in the sport. 99% of us use ropes to catch us if we fall, and that's all we do. So it's not the free soloing part, that's the ropeless die if you fall discipline.
So it means that you're climbing with your hands and your feet, so you don't get any help going up the mountain.
Right. When we were all kids and climbed trees and fences and cupboards, I mean, that's free climbing as we know it. You're just using your body to get up whatever the objective may be. And as those objectives get bigger, you use ropes to keep you from dying when you fall.
So dawn wall, maybe put dawn wall in perspective for those that may not understand the climbing universe the way you do.
So the dawn wall is in the epicenter of the climbing world. For us is Yosemite. And the dawn wall was the vision of my climbing partner, Tommy Caldwell. He was really looking for the next big objective. And he tried for a couple years on his own to tackle this thing. And it was clear that he needed a partner. And I, at the time, in 2009, was looking for a new objective. So I called Tommy out of the blue and asked if he needed a climbing partner. And luckily, he said yes. So that was kind of the start of our partnership in 2009.
So talk maybe a little bit about how you sized this up. You know, was this kind of driving by and say, hey, we want to climb that?
It was really the result of nearly 20 years of climbing experience in Yosemite and on El Capitan to know what was possible, and then to look at the dawn wall and see this impossible climb as an opportunity to become better climbers, better people. I mean, we started this thing 6 years ago, and we only finished it a couple months ago. So that, I mean, that's a really long, we're totally different people today than we were then, and we knew that getting into it, and that was something we had to accept, and something we had to be motivated by. So the climb is really broken up into 32 sections, or pitches, and a pitch is just a rope length. So some of the pitches are a lot easier, some are a lot harder than others, but it's one big puzzle. And the goal, quite simply, is to start at the ground and climb to the top, climb each pitch without falling. And if you fall, you just go back to the start of that pitch. You don't have to go all the way back down to the ground, thankfully.
And you can't go down at night, right? You can't just go to a hotel, get a burger.
Nope, you're on the wall the whole time. So our best case scenario planning for this year was 12 days. That was, we kind of mapped it out on a spreadsheet. Best case scenario, we would be on top 12 days later. So standing at the base, hearing you intro the video, standing at the base on January 27th was pretty burly, knowing that we were going to start and we weren't going to walk again for at least 2 weeks. And we were going to experience something that we would never forget for the rest of our lives.
So literally sleeping on the side of the wall.
It's more comfortable than you think, I promise.
I'm a 3-year-old, so I can relate.
Tommy as a 2-year-old, he jokes, he's like, this is the most relaxed my life has been. quiet up here.
So 12 days was best case scenario. As you're doing this, you did something a little unexpected. You started communicating with folks, started tweeting. Talk about why you did that. What was the motivation?
Sure. So in 2010, we started using social media platforms to share our experience on the wall. And that's just been part of what we do as athletes and as people. We love to share our story. And initially, it was a little weird because, climbing is supposed to be this solitary mountain man kind of thing. But what we found is that as we shared this story in real time from the side of the cliff, when we got down and we weren't alone on the side of the wall and we got to go back home, people would constantly come up to Tommy and I and say how inspired they were following along with the story. And that just started to build year after year as we kept telling this story every October, November, December for 6 years. And then it kind of reached a tipping point this year. How many of you followed the Dawn Wall in any form this year? A good chunk of you, for sure. Considering how many of you climb? A lot less. So, that's different. Our social media audience prior to this climb was 100% climbers. Now it's totally changed. People related to this climb in a totally different way than they were relating to us before. So I feel like on El Cap, in Yosemite, this canvas, this beautiful canvas, was playing out this long 3-week drama of this dream that we had, of this struggle, of the partnership, of the teamwork, and people got to follow along with that.
Well, it's in talking to you, it's a pretty human story. For example, you describe it as being broken into these 32 pitches. Pitch 15, right in the middle, that was a struggle for you. Personally, that was a struggle for you. Talk about that.
Sure. So pitch 15, like you said, it's right in the middle of the wall. It's the second hardest section of the entire climb. And what made it so hard for me, so like I said, best case scenario was 12 days. The reason it ended up taking 19 days was the fact that I got stuck in the same spot for 8 days. And it really came down to January 9th. I had rested for 2 days. My hands had been sliced pretty deep. They were really cut up. They were bleeding. I had to wait a couple days to let them heal. I used super glue and tape in order to kind of bandage them the best I could, and then wait for that perfect moment in order to push through. And I got to tell you, that's the hardest part. It was the time in between the climbing, the resting, not the climbing, because when you're tackling something that means so much to you personally, and you have so much invested, it's the state of mind that is going to see it through. It's not your physical ability. So those times when we're not climbing, those are the fragile moments where everything can crumble. Because if you're not totally resolved to see it through, it's not going to happen.
So you spent a week, basically the team is kind of waiting for you.
Totally.
All this pressure focused right on you.
Yeah, it was really intense. And I've got to thank Tommy, and it's a testament to his character. He said, he took as much pressure off as he could. He said, look, it's great weather up here, it's like a big dude's camping trip on the side of the wall, I'm happy to stay up here as long as it takes. And, I know he was itching to get to the top, because while I was stuck for 8 days on pitch 15, Tommy had gotten through all the hard parts. He was 2 days from the top. He could have sprinted to the top if I just gave up on my climb. But he waited and he took the pressure off the best he could, and it was just enough for me to find that perfect moment and take it.
So when you were on the wall, the hashtag that I found really interesting that you started to use was hashtag what's your Dawn Wall. Why that? How did that happen?
So going back to all of that downtime in that week span where I was stuck on pitch 15, my girlfriend Jacqueline, who's here, we were on the phone and we were having this dialogue about, because at this point the media attention had started to snowball, and that's something we're definitely not used to. So we were talking about, well, what's the point? What do we do with all these millions of people around the world that are inspired by this story? How can we turn that around and turn that inspiration into action for people? And she came up with this idea, this question, which turned into a hashtag, which is, what's your Dawn wall? And since then, you can look up the hashtag and you can see these amazing stories from all over the world, the most striking of which was not shared on social media, but it was shared in person. And after we talked out, Tommy and I were down in Yosemite Lodge. We were taking phone interviews, and we had just hung up, and this woman with a walker slowly approached with her husband. And you could tell she didn't want to intrude, but she really wanted to share something. And she came up to Tommy and I and said, my doctor said that if I don't get my act together, I'll be back in a wheelchair in 6 months. And my Dawn wall is to make sure that that doesn't happen. And we all just started bawling. But it's a perfect example of the power of the Dawn wall story as an example of what's possible. And if that can inspire her to stay out of a wheelchair, I mean, how cool.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So you were probably giving a lot of inspiration, but getting a lot of inspiration through that process.
I mean, that's the whole point for us, of sharing, of taking the time and energy of sharing that content while we were on the wall, is that people were inspired, and it was a circular process. So as people were inspired by the story, it snowballed, and we wanted to keep inspiring everybody, and at the same time, see our dream come true.
I mean, it's an amazing thing that you've done. That likely, be a long time, if ever, if anybody does it. So, congratulations to you. What's next? What do you do after that? How do you top it?
Well, I'm a little lost, I gotta say, as far as climbing objectives go. You don't really have a list of Dawn walls on a piece of paper. At least I don't. So after this, I'm going to go climbing in France for 10 days and have a good time and try to find that next big project.
Well, inspiration to us. Congratulations on an amazing, amazing feat. And thanks for being here with us today.
Thanks for having me.